Imagine a grand hall, sunlight streaming through towering windows. Filled with whispers and anticipation, a world-famous Grandmaster, undefeated for decades, sits at a massive chessboard, surrounded by an audience eager to witness his brilliance. Then, unexpectedly, he calls a simple woman from the crowd plain clothes. Ordinary, seemingly inexperienced to play. As a joke, the room laughs, a mix of amusement and disbelief. Certain that this is just for entertainment, she approaches slowly, heart pounding, her hands trembling as they hover over the cold, polished chess pieces. Every eye is on her, the crowd leaning forward, smirking at what they expect to be a predictable, one-sided game. Then she makes her first move. A simple pawn. Nothing extraordinary, yet something in the way she moves, it freezes the Grandmaster mid-dash gesture. Whispers die down. Eyes widen. The room grows tense with each calculated move. Her strategy becomes clear. She is not just playing, she is rewriting the rules. The Grandmaster's confident smile fades, replaced by disbelief and a creeping fear. The pieces seem to obey her in ways that feel almost alive. The audience gasps as what begins as a joke transforms into something unthinkable. A single checkmate lands, and the room falls silent. Not a cheer, not a gasp, just stunned, breathless awe. The Grandmaster, a master of decades, is left speechless, humbled. And the audience realizes they have witnessed something beyond skill, something extraordinary. Who is this woman? How could a simple player achieve what no expert ever could? And the answer, when revealed, will leave you questioning everything you know about talent, strategy, and the impossible. Watch closely, because every move tells a story you will never forget. Asterisk. The grand hall smelled of polished wood and aged paper. Sunlight filtered through towering windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. A crowd had gathered around a massive chessboard, whispers filling the air like a restless wind at the center. The Grandmaster sat, a figure of calm authority, his eyes scanning the room with quiet superiority. A simple woman in plain clothes lingered at the edge, unnoticed. Clutching a small bag close to her chest, laughter rippled through the audience when the UTNZ Grandmaster gestured toward her. "Come," he said with a smirk. "Let us have a game for amusement." She stepped forward hesitantly, her heart pounding against her ribs like a frantic drum. The floor felt unnervingly cold beneath her shoes, and the silence of anticipation pressed heavily against her ears. As she sat opposite the Grandmaster, the crowd leaned in, their eyes sharp and curious. Her hands trembled as she touched the smooth, cold chess pieces, the weight of their carved history unfamiliar in her fingers. The Grandmaster moved first, a precise, fluid motion, and smiled as if victory was inevitable. She stared at the board, confusion and doubt swirling in her mind. A subtle scent of old books and ink rose from the chessboard, filling her senses and grounding her in the moment. Then she moved a pawn without hesitation, a simple move that drew a few raised eyebrows. The Grandmaster froze, his hand hovering over his knight. A faint murmur rose from the crowd. Questioning, incredulous, uncertain, she continued to play, each move deliberate, calculated. As though the strategies of centuries whispered into her ear, the tension in the room thickened. Pressing against the walls, squeezing the breath from those watching, the Grandmaster frowned, his usual confidence cracking, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. She leaned slightly forward, eyes narrowed, the room shrinking to just the chessboard between them. A bishop slid across the board, followed by a queen, and a hush fell over the hall. The Grandmaster blinked rapidly, trying to comprehend what was unfolding. Her movements were precise, unstoppable, the crowd frozen in disbelief. A gasp escaped someone in the back, sharp and sudden, breaking the brittle quiet. The final move came swiftly, almost too quickly to notice, and the Grandmaster leaned back in shock, eyes wide and unblinking. The silence was complete, heavier than anything the hall had ever felt. The simple woman smiled faintly, almost shyly. Yet every eye was on her. The Grandmaster's hands shook as he stared at the board. Unable to speak, unable to process, the crowd held their breath. Some stepping back, some leaning in closer. Caught between awe and confusion, her victory was undeniable, her strategy flawless. Yet impossible in their minds, no one had expected the joke to end like this. With the room silenced, respect and fear mingling in the same moment. The woman rose slowly, the soft rustle of her clothes echoing in the vast hall, and the Grandmaster remained seated. Defeated yet strangely enlightened. The crowd remained frozen, their whispers swallowed by the weight of disbelief. Eyes darted between the Grandmaster and the woman. Trying to reconcile what had just happened, he rubbed his face slowly. As if to wake himself from a dream, a few hesitant hands clapped, then silence returned. Tense and expectant, the woman gathered her pieces carefully, her fingers brushing the smooth surfaces with unexpected reverence. Her heart raced. Though her expression remained calm, almost serene, the Grandmaster finally rose. His towering figure looming over her, but his voice was low, cautious, almost respectful. "Who taught you?" he asked, though he knew it was irrelevant. She shook her head gently, her eyes meeting his, quiet confidence radiating from her gaze. The murmurs in the hall grew louder, speculation mingling with astonishment. Some whispered that she must have studied in secret for years. Others swore it was impossible. A trick, a miracle, or worse. A threat to tradition itself. The chandeliers above swayed slightly, catching the light and casting fractured patterns across the room. As if the hall itself reacted to the unexpected victory, the Grandmaster stepped back, his hands clenching at his sides, the weight of humiliation pressing down on him like a physical force. He realized, with a sinking certainty, that this was more than a single defeat. It was a challenge to everything he believed about skill, experience, and superiority. The woman smiled faintly again, but her eyes were sharp, aware of the invisible tension coiling around them. The audience leaned closer. Sensing a story larger than any chessboard could contain, some tried to laugh, nervously to break the unbearable pressure. But the sound felt hollow in the echoing hall. Her victory was not just over the Grandmaster, it was over expectation itself. Over the assumptions that had ruled this space for decades. The room held its breath, waiting for the next move, for the moment when the silence might finally break. And in that silence, every spectator felt a shiver of recognition, an understanding that they had witnessed something extraordinary, something they would not soon forget. The Grandmaster lowered his gaze to the board, finally nodding once, slowly, a gesture of acknowledgement that carried more weight than words could ever convey. The woman gathered her bag, her movements calm, deliberate, as if leaving the hall untouched by the chaos she had created. The crowd began to stir, hesitant at first, then with growing energy. Some cheering, some whispering in awe, others staring in disbelief. The echo of her presence lingered, a quiet force that transformed the space, leaving everyone in the hall changed, unsettled, yet undeniably captivated. Her steps toward the exit were light, but the room felt heavier for her leaving, as though a part of its soul had been awakened. The Grandmaster remained, staring at the board, the pieces now symbols of something larger: humility, unpredictability, and the raw, unfiltered power of the unexpected. Every eye in the room followed her, knowing they had witnessed a moment that would be spoken of for years. A single game that had silenced tradition and rewritten expectation. The air vibrated with disbelief and awe, and even the walls seemed to lean closer, listening, as if eager to carry her story into the future. Asterisk. The woman reached the grand doors, her steps measured, yet the hall seemed to stretch endlessly before her. A chill ran through the audience, as if the temperature itself had shifted with her presence. The Grandmaster remained rooted, staring at the board, his mind racing, every instinct screaming that this was no ordinary game. Whispers rippled through the crowd. but they were drowned out by a low, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to come from the chessboard itself. Her hand hovered over the door handle, and a faint smile curved her lips, enigmatic and knowing. Then a soft click echoed across the hall. As if the room itself acknowledged her departure, eyes turned back to the chessboard, and the Grandmaster noticed something impossible. The pieces had subtly moved on their own. A knight faced the wrong direction. A pawn had shifted forward, and a queen now stood in a square that had been empty. The room grew colder, the light dimming unnaturally, shadows stretching like fingers across the walls. The audience froze, a collective shiver running down spines, the air thick with disbelief and unease. The Grandmaster swallowed hard, stepping closer, eyes scanning each piece as though expecting an explanation. Every piece seemed alive, imbued with intent, echoing the moves the woman had made. Yet now, more deliberate, more sinister. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum, vibrating through the floor, the walls, the very air. A sense of dread coiled around the hall like a living thing, and the Grandmaster felt the weight of centuries of strategy crushing down on him. Then the final piece moved on its own, a rook sliding across the board to trap a king in a position no one had seen before. The audience gasped, some stumbling back, unable to comprehend the impossible scene unfolding before them. The woman paused in the doorway, her silhouette framed by sunlight, yet the room seemed darker for her stillness. Her eyes glimmered with something unfathomable, a secret that no one could guess, not even the Grandmaster. She nodded once, ever so slightly, and the room trembled not physically, but in perception, as if reality had shifted subtly, yet irrevocably. The Grandmaster sank into his chair, pale, silent, staring at the board with awe, terror, and a dawning realization that he had encountered something far beyond human skill. The woman opened the door fully, stepping out into the sunlight, and the hall remained locked in a stunned silence, trapped between disbelief and fear, forever haunted by the impossible game. The pieces on the board did not move again. Yet every eye in the room knew they had not witnessed the end, only the beginning of something far greater, something they could not yet understand. The woman's figure vanished into the sunlight, yet her presence lingered like a shadow over every mind in the hall. The Grandmaster sat frozen, his hands trembling as he stared at the chessboard. Unwilling or unable to move a single piece, the audience shifted uneasily, some daring to speak, but their voices faltered under the weight of what they had witnessed. Then, a faint whisper seemed to float through the hall, soft, distant, almost too quiet to hear. It carried a warning, a promise, a challenge no one could quite decipher. Yet it made the skin crawl and hearts pound. The chess pieces glimmered faintly, catching the light in impossible angles. As if charged with an intelligence of their own, the Grandmaster reached out hesitantly, touching a rook, and felt a shock ripple through his fingers. Cold and sharp, leaving a taste of iron in his mouth, he recoiled, and the room seemed to darken, shadows creeping along the walls like living creatures. The crowd realized something terrifying. The game was not over. It had merely been paused, suspended by forces beyond comprehension. A low, resonant hum filled the hall, vibrating in the bones, rattling teeth. A sound that carried both awe and threat. The Grandmaster's eyes darted around, searching for an explanation for a human face, for any anchor to reality, but found none. He noticed then that the pieces had rearranged themselves into a configuration he had never seen. Impossible, yet deliberate. The air seemed thicker, heavier, pressing down as if the hall itself had become a living entity. Aware, expectant, a sudden chill brushed past the spectators, carrying a faint scent of smoke and metal, sharp and unnerving. Then the whisper returned, louder this time, threading through the minds of everyone present. A voice that was not spoken yet unmistakably heard. It said a single word, victory, but it carried no triumph. Only a cold, creeping certainty that the woman's presence was not merely skill, it was power. Something otherworldly, untouchable. And beyond challenge, the Grandmaster leaned back, his mind unraveling. Realizing the truth he had denied, the game had never been about chess at all. Every eye in the room turned instinctively toward the doorway, half expecting her to reappear, yet knowing deep down that she was no longer bound to their world. And in that silence, that weight of incomprehensible awe, the hall understood something chilling. Some victories cannot be measured, some players cannot be challenged, and some mysteries will haunt the mind forever. The chessboard remained. Untouched yet alive, a monument to a moment that would echo in every corner of the hall, in every thought for decades to come. The hall remained frozen, every heartbeat echoing loudly in the tense silence. Then, from the shadows near the ceiling, a faint glimmer appeared. Like a flicker of light that should not exist, it danced across the walls, tracing patterns over the marble. As if the room itself had begun to bend and shift, the Grandmaster rose unsteadily, eyes wide, a cold sweat running down his temples. He looked at the chessboard again. But the pieces were no longer inanimate, they shimmered subtly. Vibrating with a life that defied reason, a whisper grew louder, threading into words that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Checkmate," it said, and the voice carried a resonance that shook the very foundations of the hall. The audience gasped, stepping back, some clutching their heads as if to contain the impossible. The Grandmaster reached for the queen, his hand hovering, but an invisible force stopped him. Lifting it slightly, then setting it down in a new position on its own, every piece moved, orchestrated with precision beyond any human comprehension. Then a sudden warmth swept through the hall, contrasting with the chill that had gripped them moments before. It was her presence, though she was gone. A lingering energy that radiated intelligence, power, and a quiet menace. The walls seemed to pulse, the chandeliers above swaying gently as if the room were breathing. The Grandmaster's mind raced, and he realized the horrifying truth. She had never been playing a simple game, and this was never about human skill. Her movements, her strategy, her presence, it had altered reality in subtle, undeniable ways, leaving an imprint impossible to erase. The audience watched, frozen, as the pieces finally stopped moving, forming a pattern that seemed to spell something ancient, unintelligible, yet unmistakably deliberate. The air hummed with an almost sacred energy, and even the bravest souls felt a trembling fear, a recognition that they had brushed against something not meant for ordinary comprehension. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the hall fell silent once more, the temperature normalizing, the light steady, yet the feeling of being observed, of having witnessed the impossible, lingered in every soul. The Grandmaster sank into his chair, broken, enlightened, and terrified. Knowing he had encountered a force that could never be challenged or understood, no one spoke. Yet every mind was alight with the memory of the woman and the game that had bent reality. And in that quiet, that impossible stillness, the hall understood a terrifying truth. She had not come to play. She had come to rewrite the rules, and she had succeeded. The chessboard remained silent and gleaming, a testament to a power that no one dared confront again. Every eye turned toward the doorway, almost hoping, almost fearing that she might return. But she would not. Not in the way they expected. Her game had ended, yet its consequences had only begun, and the Grandmaster knew, with a sinking certainty, that nothing in the world would ever feel the same again. The Grandmaster sat motionless, staring at the chessboard as if it held the answers to the universe. A cold wind whispered through the hall. Though no doors or windows had moved, the pieces glimmered faintly in the dim light, each one vibrating with an energy that defied explanation. Then, a voice, soft, distant, yet undeniably present, filled the room. Not spoken aloud, but echoing inside the minds of everyone. "There you witnessed what you were never meant to see," it said. The audience shivered, eyes wide, some gripping each other for reassurance. Though no one had the courage to speak, the Grandmaster rose slowly, hands trembling, and felt a profound understanding settle over him. She was not human, not in the way they understood. Her presence had been a test, a revelation, a force beyond comprehension, reshaping reality with the simplicity of a gesture. The walls seemed to pulse, and the chandeliers flickered as if acknowledging her power. The light bending unnaturally around the edges of the room. Then a faint silhouette appeared in the doorway, not fully formed, almost like smoke or mist, yet unmistakably her. Her eyes glowed faintly, a soft, otherworldly light that pierced the shadows. The Grandmaster fell to his knees, not in fear, but in awe, understanding that he had been a mere spectator to something far greater than mastery or skill. The audience could barely breathe, caught between wonder and terror. Unable to look away as the figure moved slowly into the hall, she extended a hand toward the chessboard, and the pieces rose. Hovering in the air, as if obeying an invisible conductor, the room trembled, not violently, but with a subtle force that made every hair on every arm stand on end. The Grandmaster whispered, his voice breaking, "Who are you?" She tilted her head, a serene smile crossing her face, eyes reflecting centuries of knowledge and power. "I am the keeper of the game," she said, voice echoing like a wind through empty corridors, "and every move you witnessed was only the beginning." The chess pieces fell gently back onto the board, perfectly aligned, yet each one now radiated a subtle, almost imperceptible hum of life. The audience realized with a sinking chill that the woman's game had altered something fundamental. Just the board. Not just the hall, but perception itself. Every mind in the room felt stretched, expanded as if the rules of reality had subtly shifted. Leaving them forever changed, she turned toward the exit, her form beginning to dissolve into the light, leaving only a lingering shimmer in the air. The Grandmaster remained on the floor, silent, broken, yet enlightened, staring at the board that would never look ordinary again. And in the fading light, the room knew something terrifying and beautiful. The game had ended, but the presence of the player would haunt them forever. The hall would never forget. The world, they realized, would never be the same. Asterisk, the shimmering light faded, but the air remained thick with her presence. The Grandmaster slowly rose, every joint aching, every thought racing, yet he could not erase the memory of what had occurred. The chessboard gleamed, ordinary in appearance, but he knew it was a light's very essence had been touched by something beyond comprehension. Whispers broke out among the audience, tentative, uneasy, trying to rationalize the impossible, yet failing utterly. Then a cold, subtle vibration moved through the floor, rising into the walls. As if the hall itself were breathing, the Grandmaster approached the board, his fingers trembling over the pieces, sensing a pulse, a heartbeat beneath their polished surfaces. The realization struck him like a thunderclap. This was not a game, and it never had been. Every move she made, every pause, every subtle smile had been a lesson, a warning, a demonstration of power. He could feel the boundaries of reality stretching, bending, as though the rules of the world itself were malleable under her influence. The audience grew silent again, captivated and terrified, sensing something in the room that defied logic. Then a shadow flickered at the doorway, though no one had entered, and the temperature dropped suddenly, prickling skin and sending shivers down spines. A voice, low and melodic, filled the minds of everyone present. Threading through thoughts, calm yet commanding, "You have seen the beginning of what is possible," it said, each word vibrating with authority and otherworldly knowledge. The Grandmaster staggered back, heart hammering, mind reeling at the weight of comprehension. The chessboard shifted slightly, pieces moving of their own accord, forming shapes and patterns that suggested intelligence far beyond human reasoning. Fear and awe clashed within the room, leaving an electric tension that made every breath feel sharp and precious. The audience dared not move, dared not blink. Feeling themselves witnesses to a force that existed outside of time and logic, the Grandmaster whispered again, almost to himself, "She is not merely a player. she is a reckoning. Then the faint shimmer of her form appeared once more. Just beyond the threshold, light cascading around her, eyes glowing with unearthly depth. "You have learned much," the voice echoed, "but understanding will come slowly, and the world will remember this night forever." And with that, she vanished completely, leaving behind only the lingering hum of power and the impossibly stilled chessboard. The Grandmaster fell to his knees again, the weight of knowledge pressing down, knowing the game was never over, it had only just begun. In ways no one could yet see, the hall was silent, but the echoes of her presence remained, threading through every mind, every thought, leaving a permanent mark of awe and unease. Every spectator understood instinctively the woman had changed everything, and nothing would ever be the same again. And somewhere, beyond their perception, the game waited, alive, patient. An eternal asterisk days passed, yet the hall remained heavy with memory, as if the very walls had absorbed the impossible events. The Grandmaster returned to the chessboard, hands steady now. But his mind was changed forever. He moved the pieces carefully, testing patterns. But no strategy could replicate what had occurred. The audience slowly dispersed, each carrying a silent reverence, a quiet awe that settled into their bones. No one spoke of the woman directly, but her presence lingered in every whispered conversation, every remembered glance, every paused heartbeat. The chessboard sat in the center of the hall, ordinary to the eye, but extraordinary to the soul. A silent monument to what had transpired. The Grandmaster finally stood, looking out the towering windows at the world beyond. Feeling both humbled and enlightened, he realized the truth he could never forget. Mastery is fleeting, knowledge is endless, and some forces exist far beyond human comprehension. And somewhere, just beyond perception, the woman's presence remained a quiet reminder that the game of life, like chess, holds mysteries that no one can ever fully control. The hall grew still, sunlight casting long golden shadows. Peaceful yet charged with the memory of what had passed, the Grandmaster smiled faintly, a mixture of awe and understanding, and walked away. Leaving the chessboard behind, the world would remember that day, not for who won or lost, but for the presence of something extraordinary. Something that had quietly rewritten the rules of reality, and though she had gone, the story of the simple woman who silenced the room would echo for generations. A whisper of wonder and fear, of brilliance and mystery, never to be forgotten. The game had ended, yet its impact was eternal.